Good afternoon, traders, and I hope you're very well today. My name is Nishal Patel, and this is Phoenix Blues Daily Update. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of October, 2017. And we're going to first start off with economic data we've seen over the course of today. The big news for today has to be the RBA rate statement that came out first thing in the early hours of this morning here in London at 4:30 a.m. as you can see on the screen. As you can see, nothing was changed. There was no change in the cash rate. The statement did actually give the market a little bit of movement, but we haven't really seen too movement on the Australian dollar as to speak. But we did have construction PMI out first thing this morning here in London on the sterling, and that was well below the intended outcome or the expected figures. As you can see on our screen, 48.1 with a 51.1 expected. That obviously had a bearing onto the GBP. Just like the figures out yesterday morning, didn't work too favourably on the pound sterling, and really did drag it down over the course of today. Pound sterling, that being said, the pound sterling definitely has been the weakest currency over the first 2 days of trading, and it looks like it's probably not really seeing any it being relented off. But moving on forward, what we need to be aware of today is, well, not just today, I think, is this week more than anything else, is that it's a very big week. We've got huge announcements literally as of tomorrow. Both the ECB President Draghi speaking tomorrow afternoon, followed by Yellen. Obviously, it's an NFP week as well, so ADP figures are going to be released tomorrow, with the NFP final figures being released on Friday, but over the course of Wednesday and Thursday, there are key figures of central banks speaking over the course of those days. So very, very heavy in terms of the news and the data that is going to be coming out. So guys, please be aware, if you are uncertain about your positions and most importantly monetary policy decisions, then stay away from the market, and try not to leave too much exposure left on the tables. Of course, even us at Phoenix Blue, and for many professional traders alike, they're going to be very cautious in their outlook of the trades they are putting out there. But let's have a look at the markets, and let's have a look at the charts and see how the currencies as well as the stock markets have performed. So guys, just starting off with the dollar index as usual. Right now, the dollar index floating at 93.31. Hasn't really maintained its bullish momentum over the course of today. Has been fluctuating to a fair degree, but we've seen a lot of positions being taken out and closed off over the course of today. Obviously, having run the full course of the quarter, and then obviously falling into the final quarter over the course of September, and then starting into October, and knowing there are some key decisions over the course of the next few days. Many traders are taking the positions off the table, or downsizing or limiting the risk. We've seen the dollar take a slight or pulling back ever so slightly over its relentless move that we've seen over the last course of the last fortnight, but just breathing and exhaling a little, pulling back to that 90, 92, 93 area right now. And if we just move over to the euro not falling as aggressively as some of the other currency pairs. Again, we did see that initial strength on the USD earlier on, but that has relented somewhat, and it's given up some ground to the euro, really moving off from the lows that we saw earlier on. And definitely I would say these lows really holding on, and as we can see right now, with the euro floating at 1760 right now. The yen is quite an interesting one, and really shows the extent of the moves that we've seen. I'm just going to remove this little trend line that was off a smaller time frame, and Right now it's floating at 12.79. Definitely still seeing those highs and the strength of the USD come into play. Again, the USD easing off the pedal ever so much, and we have seen some short bursts and volatile spikes on the sell-off and the uptake of the USD over the course of today. So, you know, it's been slightly turbulent in terms of trading, but definitely the yen still looks very bullish. And if this momentum in the USD is going to continue, then we should at least expect the yen to get to that 114 area. Right now floating just below 113 at 112.79. Just moving on to the Australian dollar, we did have the cash rate and the rate statement yesterday. We can see again low testing today as it stands on this daily time frame. Right now floating at 0.7828, coming down and testing that, testing the lows that we saw earlier on. And I would say more than anything else, we've seen the lows being tested of that 77.90 area, so it's going to be quite interesting for us as traders, and most importantly I would definitely be looking for a good push and close below that 7800 area. We haven't seen any closes below that 7800, but definitely we've seen it knocking on the door over the course of today and trying to test it yesterday. The weakest currency pair on the block, or the weakest currency versus the USD, definitely on the block, has to be the sterling. Definitely, as you can see, against the greenback right now, floating at 1.3251. Definitely coming off those highs of that 1.3500, and I would say just below and knocking on the door of that 1.3600 area, but definitely giving up the pace. We're probably looking for some kind of turn, and most certainly looking for price action to give us a clue there. I'm looking for an area of around 1.2980 for a potential return, to look for a potential reversal. I do think that we could see momentum change on the sterling, but again, that is also down to Brexit negotiations, which don't seem to be going too favourably right now, especially with Theresa May in an awful lot of a mess, with her losing the confidence of many in her own party here in the UK. So political issues again taking the front seat here, and not just really bad data calling the shots on the side of the sterling. That being said, we have seen some good strength on the USD as well, which again hasn't been too favorable on the sterling. Good profits being made from many parties, us included. So taking sterling short was a fairly easy trade. So moving on forward, just having a quick look at the loonie. Right now floating at 1.2498, just below that 2500 area, failing to break it over the course of the last 2 days, but what's definitely sure is it hasn't lost that momentum, and many traders have been looking for this to fall on the wayside and start dropping short again. Haven't seen that materialize, obviously with Polar speaking last week. That definitely lifted it well above that 2400 area, and it's stayed above that. It's propped itself above on this level of support and resistance as highlighted on this screen, and it hasn't come back down to test since. So that's quite interesting. We have had GDT data out in terms of the New Zealand dollar, again another currency which really hasn't been helped too much by some of the data that has been released. Right now floating at 0.7154. Moving on forward, we'll just have a look at a couple of commodities. Just having a look at WTI. We can see WTI breaking that $52 a barrel over the course of last week, which we expected, having come down and tested that $50 a barrel. Right now floating just above that $50.17 a barrel. Again, probably looking for this to carry on in its bullish momentum. And moving on to the price of gold. Right now, gold floating at $1273.97 dollars per troy ounce, still on its bearish descent back to that 1200 area that many traders would like to see it back at, but has some key levels to pass en route. Obviously, with the favorable USD right now, probably expect this to continue in one direction. That being said, as we've said earlier, it is a very big week in terms of data releases and central bank announcements, and we need to be really careful. So guys, take caution over the next few days of trading, or most certainly this week. If you are at an intermediate or a novice level, I would strongly urge you to stay away from the markets over the course of this week, in fact. And as always, if you've got any questions, feel free to get back to us, and we will be happy to help at info@phoenixblue.co.uk. Till next time, traders, happy trading. Bye bye.